Don't you girls ever think of anything but men? The idea of spending your whole life flattering the ego of some tobacco-smelling male. I can think of 1,000 better ways of being happy.
You have no idea how right you look with a baby in your arms.
You have no idea how right I feel.
Oh, women. They always mess things up.
Yes, I hate women, too. I just want to forget they exist. Don't you?
By the end of the 30s, the great Astaire-Rogers partnership was breaking up. At their peak, they'd been number 3 at the box office. Only Clark Gable and Shirley Temple had been more popular. But the last of the Astaire-Rogers films, the story of Vernon and Irene Castle, had resulted in a huge financial loss and put an end to what had been the most profitable and memorable series of movies in the company's history. In her own right, Ginger Rogers was steadily emerging as RKO's prime financial asset and was the only major star under exclusive contract. This was her special dressing room, still known as the Ginger Rogers House, provided for her on the lot. It was a distinction afforded no other actor, but the studio had good reason to keep Miss Rogers happy. But something happened at the 1940 Oscar presentations that only a couple of years before, nobody in Hollywood would have believed possible.
Thank you, Miss Fontaine. I don't know how to express my gratitude.
The Oscar for Best Actress went to a one-time bit part player and the ex-dancing partner of Fred Astaire.
Did that surprise you? Did it come as a...
Terrible, frightening, wonderful, horrendous surprise. It was just one of those things that you say, I'm sure that I heard wrong when they said my name. I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was just incredible because the race was so filled full of interesting ladies that year. It was Katharine Hepburn for Philadelphia Story, and there was Betty Davis for The Letter, Joan Fontaine for Rebecca, Martha Scott, Our Town, and then Kitty Foyle with me in it. It was a very good race, shall we say. It was a good thing to win.
You needn't worry about me. I'm free, white, and 21, or almost. And I'll go on loving you from here on out, or until I stop loving you. But nobody owes a thing to Kitty Foyle, except Kitty Foyle.
Ginger Rogers plays an office girl who falls in love with the boss. He's married, she gets pregnant, but he offers to take care of her under his own conditions.
I love you this minute as I've never loved you before.
And I thought you'd forgotten.
You didn't. You never thought that for a minute. You know too well how I've wanted you.
You're going to be divorced.
No. I'm afraid I can't even promise you that.
Then wait.
That's it. I wish it were different. But that's the way it is.
I see.
Whatever you decide, I'm sailing anyway. I've broken away for good. But I'm hoping, I'm praying now that we'll go away together. And be together always.
Maybe it seems a little sentimental today, but for the movie audiences in 1940, Kitty Foyle was a frank and uncompromising picture about the life of an ordinary working girl, a stark contrast to the glamorous Ginger Rogers of the musicals. Over the past decade, RKO had realized that women were a target audience. The studio had become known for its so-called women's pictures. Back in 1931, Ginger's first movies had featured her in more stereotypical roles.
You can open your eyes. You're not getting any treat. What are you doing here?
Trying to plug the fix. I mean, fix the plug. But I'll step out for a minute.
Oh, that's all right. I was just in there bathing my feet.
Well, I guess everybody does it once in a while.
Right this way, folks. The best kisses in Coney Island.
Hello, Mary.
For nearly 6 years, she was stuck with spunky, wisecracking mouths and a run of forgettable comedies.
It's always pretty when you're around, Sally.
Save that for your lady passengers.
Which one?
And here with William Boyd, later Hopalong Cassidy, she's the simple showgirl who captures the heart of a lumberjack.
Hey, are you happy?
You betcha.
Hey, gang. What's got something to tell you?
Could the studios just make you do whatever they wanted to
Not
do the films in
really.
those audiences?
Not really. They could surely they could make me perform in the film that they had chosen for me to do, of course. And of course, I wasn't like some of the actresses who sued a studio like they did at Warner Brothers, but for putting me in things I didn't want to be in. There were things I didn't like, but I was obedient and did the things that I was told to do. And it worked out all right for me. I think it worked out very well.
Until Fred Astaire came along, RKO was content to let Ginger Rogers play her succession of pinup girls and gangster molls. They now had a far more problematic talent on their books, and they had to find vehicles for her.
Sign your contracts. Run along, Bob. All right.
There's one person in the whole world I prayed particularly to meet. It's you.
Thank you. You've been on the stage long?
Well, not the regular stage, but I was in a lot of plays the Franklin Theater Guild gave at the Little Theater.
The Little Theater?
Yes, at Franklin, Vermont, where I lived until some time ago. The Franklin papers, both of them agreed that I had a future. I play all sorts of parts. Hedda, you know, Ibsen's Hedda, of course. The old woman in Riders to the Sea. The Queen and the Queen's Enemies by Dunsany and Kitty in Shaw's You Never Can Tell.
Bernard
Also-
Shaw?
Yes, the one and only.
Oh, you think Shaw's clever?
He's the greatest living dramatist.
You really think so?
I know it.
Was Hepburn a big stage star when she arrived?
No, she was not. She was a girl who had appeared on the stage in minor roles, or perhaps in a major role in a play that flopped immediately, you know. She was anything but a big star. But she treated herself like a star in the negotiations. She wouldn't sign a term contract, and her agent, Leland Hayward, wouldn't let her sign a term contract, so she signed a contract that gave her X dollars a week for a period of 5 weeks, for maybe 5 pictures over a period of time. And she was getting what for her at that time was a very big salary, $1,500 a week.
Morning Glory won Katharine Hepburn her first Best Actress Oscar. It was, by the way, a tribute to her own tenacity as well as her talent.
I had a date with Pandro Berman in his office. And like many people, I looked around at the various and sundry papers on the table and read them. And I saw this thing by Zoe Akins called Morning Glory, and I started to read it. And I thought, my gosh. And I said to the secretary, cancel the date with Pandro. And I took my friend Laura out. We broke the script in half. And I read it, and then I came back, and I said to Pandro, you have a script on your desk, and I want to do it. And he said, that script is for Connie Bennett. And I said, over my dead body, it's for Connie Bennett. She was the big star on the lot, and sweet to me, always nice. And, but I said, does she know anything about it? He said, no. I said, it's got to be mine. Mine. So it was.
Opinions seem to differ as to whether I'll ever be able to make good, Miss Easton.
What do you think yourself?
Well, I'm just a little bit afraid to think.
She's just a stage-struck kid that I met in Easton's office. I think she's a bit nutty.
You know, I completely lost track of you after you left our show.
Well, it's my fault, really. As I was telling Mr. Hedges, I've been frightfully busy. You know how it is, one's continually on the run, seeing this manager and that.
With success?
More or less. You see, I've turned down several parts. I learned my lesson in your show. From now on, I'm accepting no part unless I feel that I'm particularly fitted for it.
I see.
She said and did exactly what she thought, which was unconventional to begin with. So many people were affected and had poses of various sorts, or either from shyness or embarrassment or in sense of insecurity or whatever. But she was seemed pretty secure in herself. And she, instead of dressing up in fancy clothes, would come in blue jeans, one of the first in blue jeans, and bicycle to the studio, or come roaring in some fourth-hand car, hair a mess and freckles all over the place, and so forth. Never bothered to make up or anything until she got ready to work, and then she was wonderful. Well, she was an aspiring actress who took her acting ambitions very, very seriously. I forget what my part was entirely. I just know that it all came off all right, and that what was originally meant to be a 3-star show, she won the Oscar, and people have forgotten that Manju and I were even in it.
Here they are, the best bets of cinema land, 14 lucky girls, Hollywood's unanimous choice of the stars of tomorrow.
There were thousands of them, of course, all these hopeful young women waiting to be molded to the requirements of the studio bosses and the producers and the public.
We would like to see your profile, Ruth Hall.
Is this what you want?
Exactly. Patricia Ellis, will you kindly turn?
Want me to turn completely round?
Some tried it via the casting couch. Most vanished without trace.
Thank you, Miss Ellis.
And I suppose Ginger Rogers wants to dance.
I'd much rather dance than do this.
We knew it.
Even those with real talent needed all the help they could get. In Ginger Rogers' case, from one of the most ambitious of show business mothers, the formidable Leela Rogers.
Your mother obviously played a huge part in your career.
Oh, of course.
Can you tell us?
I would never have been able to do anything had it not been for her, because I started in the business too young, and if I hadn't had her as my guide, I would never have been able to get to, my toe on the stage. But she was. They finally put her under contract to RKO and gave her a theater there for the young players, and she was putting them in plays. They were doing wonderfully, and the producers would come and see her, talk to her about how does this girl Lucille Ball do.
That was a wonderful thing that Leela Rogers was doing, that Ginger's mother, besides taking very good care of Ginger, found time to help the younger people on the lot and invited us to a workshop that she was conducting. And she was studying with several people, as a matter of fact. And she would go to her lessons and come and directly give what she had learned to us. And we were in her workshop on the lot 3 or 4 times a week.
She was very valuable because she was more or less right about everything, which was hard for me to swallow because mothers and daughters sometimes cross swords when it comes to making decisions. And so I crossed swords with her many times, but I adored her. And I knew that she was giving me the best she understood. But my staying with RKO, I really loved staying with that studio, and she was all for my staying with them.
The lights are low. Here we go.
Spurred on by the indefatigable Leela Rogers, Lucille Ball started off her career at the bottom of the ladder.
You were available for a lot of publicity, pictures, and you learned how to conduct yourself on a set, and you'd be around 500-600 people and not make any noise. And occasionally met stars, and occasionally met the director, and occasionally got a line. And I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was learning. I was part of the biz, finally. And I had a 7-year contract.
I call your attention to the gargoyles, a detail typical of the best Gothic style.
All right, big boy, where do we go from here?
Gwendolyn, if you'd keep still 1 minute, you might acquire some cultural background.
I don't want any more culture. It makes my feet hurt.
Contract players are just contract players. Whatever comes along that you fit physically, if they want dance hall girls or they want this or they want that, if you happen to fit it physically, that's about all you could wish for. I was very aware of that. I never objected to anything except the heat in the valley, but it paid off for me.
Hello. How was heaven when you left?
Tell me, little boy, did you get a whistle or a baseball bat with that suit?
There were people who made demands. I was not one of them. I was a pushover for learning the ways of the studio. I knew instinctively that being a part of the studio and being liked around there and not a troublemaker and not someone who was too demanding, that this was process of learning that I appreciated. And that's the truth.
Hey, I bet Mrs. Bowles talks his language.
Oh, well, that's what you got to put up with here at camp.
You meet a nice, serious-type fellow, and along comes some flighty divorcee. Believe you me, I'm going to give that mug a mighty good piece of my mind. Buzzy!
But after all,
Dear Buzzy Armbruster, do you realize we had a horseback day to go riding?
I was too tired. I wasn't in the mood. All right, I didn't keep it. What about it?
Well, nothing about it.
Why don't you go home? Your clock needs winding.
Oh, my goodness, just look at my little Buzzykins get sore.
Eventually, they would send me scripts and say, would you like to do this, which was a big thrill. One day I saw on a script, Lucille Ball type. That was one of the biggest thrills I could imagine. Imagine that anybody knew who Lucille Ball was. And that was just to myself I enjoyed that. There was no one else to enjoy it with. And I didn't get the part. But anyway.
RKO was a sort of family affair. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everything about everybody. And I can remember G.B. Stern and Clemence Dane in large hats and frightfully English walking into the RKO dining room for lunch, the restaurant where everyone ate. And it was, you knew the heads of the company, you knew them all, they knew all about you. And you were pretty well up on what was going on every set. At least I was. I assumed that everyone else was.
I think it's interesting, some of the ideas that people have about studios. They're not what the public has conceived as a place to work. They all think that everybody knows everybody. And you don't. People worked on the studio lot at RKO. I never got to meet Ethel Barrymore. She was there. Hundreds of people.
And what about the technicians and they were familiar to you because you kept seeing them again
Well,
and
of course,
again.
I'd see one in one film, and one at one film, and one at another. There were hundreds of technicians. We'd have different cameramen and different soundmen and so on.
You know, I knew a cutter named Billy Hamilton very well, and I used to see a lot of other people's rushes with him. Then also a cutter named Jane Loring was a very good friend of mine. And Max Steiner, who did the music for Little Women, Roy Webb, who did the music for Morning Glory. One woman who was a wardrobe woman, they're named Emily Perkins, finally came to work for me. And they were a colorful group. Lots of nice Irish drunks to make things happy.
With the accolade of an Oscar behind her, Kate Hepburn had enough clout by now to demand a list of suitable directors for her new picture, Alice Adams. Pandro Berman reluctantly supplied one, recommending his choice, the relatively inexperienced George Stevens. Hepburn wanted the heavyweight, William Wyler.
I said to her, as long as we have this differing of opinion, you for Wyler, me for Stevens, why don't we toss a coin and see what happens? She said, okay. So I flipped a coin, and it came up Wyler. I was disappointed. I looked at her, and I thought I caught a slight sense of hesitance and doubt in her mind. So I said, why don't we flip it again? She said, okay. Well, then I knew I had her. I flipped it again. It came up Stevens, and that's how we made it.
George Stevens was a brilliant young director of light comedy. In Alice Adams, there is a characteristic scene of domestic embarrassment. The upper-class Fred McMurray is invited to dinner by Katharine Hepburn, agonizingly anxious to prove her family's sophistication.
Mrs. Adams, this is my favorite dish.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Father doesn't seem to care much for sweetbreads. I'm afraid you're not a real gourmet, Daddy.
Huh?
That's a French word. It means epicure. Most food terms are from the French. That's because the French are so distinguished for their cooking. It's just like most musical terms being from the Italian, because the Italians wrote such wonderful music. And what do the Americans famous for, do you suppose? What do you think, Arthur?
Well,
Business, I suppose. Banking, manufacturing, and so on. Isn't it funny?
So these are Brussels sprouts. Well, they certainly smell at the house.
Now, what can have been in Cook's mind not to have made an aspic instead of a heavy entree for weather like this? I'm afraid we let the servants do too much as they like about the meals, Mother. Perhaps we should changer les domestiques, n'est-ce pas?
Hepburn and her very individual choice of material went over particularly well with sophisticated audiences. Her pictures were always more popular on the East Coast than in the West and Midwest. She was big in Japan, too. Judging from this file of letters, looks like there are more than 100 here. All from one Mr. Fujisawa. I won't attempt to read them. Ginger Rogers had a huge following abroad, too. Which brings us to this sad story of a London bobby who wrote this letter to Miss Rogers in December 1936. Dear Miss Rogers, I'm only 24 years of age, 6 feet, 2 inches in height, a champion police boxer, swimmer, also a first-class police car driver.
I know you receive thousands of fan letters daily, but this is from a genuine young police inspector with the tang of Irish adventure coursing through his veins.
Darling.
So please try and remember what all your fellow stars say to the English. Your London police are wonderful, and employ one as a bodyguard. If you have any doubts, I have my photograph and particulars always ready, in case you give me a real chance to do a worshipful service to you, to be employed as a chauffeur or a bodyguard. Junior Inspector, Metropolitan Police, James H. Barlow.
James H. what?
Barlow.
Barlow? Oh, I'm sorry I never saw that. I'm sorry I never saw the picture of it. That's a very sad little tale.
The story was picked up, believe it or not, by the Sydenham, Forest Hill, and Penge Gazette, P.C. Barlow's local paper. And of course, his chief constable read it, too. The final act in this tragic drama is here, in this cable to Ginger from Barlow. Compelled resigned police, distressed at disclosure, now unemployed. Can you suggest anything?
There must have been something to make you remember my letter from all the hundreds that wrote you, or my picture. Or give me a chance, that's all.
I do like you a lot.
That's enough to start on. I couldn't expect more to start on. I reckon you know how I feel about you, Miss Glory.
Tell me. You don't kiss like you look.
Besides the fan thing, were you pampered because you were a star?
Nope. I mean, that's an old wives' tale. I don't know. I think Shirley Temple was the one that was pampered. But I don't know of any grown-up, at least I don't know of them, who were. I certainly was not.
I won't be a girl. I won't be weak and I won't be silly. I'll be a boy and rough and hard. I won't care what I do.
What are you doing? Stop that!
Don't worry, I'm ready for anything.
Meanwhile, for the more wayward talent of Katharine Hepburn, things had started to go sour. She and director George Cukor teamed up again, and they bullied Pandro Berman into letting them make Sylvia Scarlett, in which Hepburn takes the perilous step of a change of gender.
Viens, Papa, viens, tu ne dois pas rester ici. Come on, Father, the boat's in.
Oh, your son, is it? Yes, this is my boy,
Sylvester.
Making his first trip to England. Oh. Yes, and this is Mr.
Monkley. Jimmy Monkley, that's me. Little friend of all the world, nobody's enemy but me own.
Yeah, I can tell that by the look of you.
Hey! Oh, you're a bit ticklish, aren't you? Just wondering if there's any more lace in the family. Well, toodaloo. See you later.
Not if I can help it.
Now, Sylvia Scarlett, I thought, I think we just somewhere went wrong on the script, because Compton Mackenzie's book is brilliant. And I began to realize about 4 weeks in, it took us 200 years to shoot the picture. Everything had calmed down by then. And I thought, I wonder whether George Cukor thinks that this is as bad as I think it is. Because the picture starts brilliantly, and Cary Grant was wonderful in that picture, I thought.
You can use a girl for a lot of things. By Jove, if only we had one. There's a badger game, 50 thing.
Would a girl really help?
Certainly she'd help. You can take in any mug that way. If we had a girl now, we'd be on Easy Street.
Would we? Jimmy, we've got a little surprise for you.
Yeah, what?
Youth who struck father, released.
What's the matter with him? Oh, I don't know. Something in the paper. Well, that's what it is about girls. Show them a little bit of humor, affection in it. You can handle them proper. And if they get a bit too rowdy, give them a clip on the ear. Chuck them aside, just like that. Get yourself another.
If I were the girl, I'd see myself dead before I got mixed up with you.
No, don't talk silly. Now, look here, Jimmy. As a matter of fact, I'll tell
Besides,
you...
girls talk. You wouldn't want all your secrets told, would you, Father?
Now, where's the idea? Where's the idea?
I've got it. Why in the world didn't I think of it before? Why? We could be on Easy Street.
Well, what is it? Come on, spit it out.
Why don't we all get jobs and go to work? Hey!
And we had an awful lot of fun at the beginning of the thing. But then it just didn't go anywhere. And it still doesn't go anywhere. It makes absolutely no sense. Natasha Palais was in it, and she'd never done much acting. And at one point, I don't know whether she was trying to drown herself or what was happening, and I said, "Don't worry, Natasha, I'm a very good swimmer. I will save you." And we were out on the beach in California, and these huge waves coming in. Well, they toppled poor Natasha, and then they hit me, and I didn't know where I was. I was trying to find myself. And of course, some of the lifeguards had to rush in and save Natasha. It was really a mess, but it was a mess. It made no sense. And it still makes no sense. And we took it down to San Diego to preview. And Natasha was sitting next to me, and she said, "Kate, why don't they laugh?" And I said, "Because they don't think it's funny." And then when it ended, audience was leaving in droves. And I went down to the ladies' room, and a woman was lying there, practically unconscious. And I said, "Didn't you like the picture?" And she just rolled her eyes up.
It was an unmitigated disaster. It was considered to be the worst A picture ever released by RKO. And here, somebody has dutifully filed away all of the preview comments. Every unkind word preserved for posterity. My only reaction was one of repugnance at witnessing such a lewd portrayal. The theme was so sordid. Even the splendid cast could not overcome the filthy insinuations. Definitely not. Overacted. Hepburn's overacting spoils what the others put into the picture. It has so many things wrong with it, I could scarcely see just where you could start doctoring it.
And we went back to Cukor's house, and Pandro met us at Cukor's house. Of course, it had cost over $1 million, which was a lot of money in those days.
Catherine and George, who wanted to be nice to me, said, "We know, we forced you into this. We wouldn't let you off the hook. We loved it, and you hated it, and you let us make it, which was very nice of you, but we're very sorry, and we want to make up to you for it. We will both make the next picture for you free of charge." And I said, "God Almighty, heaven forbid, I never want to see either one of you again."
It was terribly funny, but it was a disaster. And it's why it's a success now is that the audience also now must be a disaster. At least when it was made, they had sense enough not to go. I don't understand how it could be a cult picture, because it's hopeless.
I know what it is that gives me a queer feeling when I look at you. There's something in you to be painted.
Oh, I say, that's marvelous. I say, I wonder what it'd be like to kiss anybody with a mustache like that.
I don't know.
Let's try.
You want to do that for?
Perhaps the sexual ambivalences in Sylvia Scarlett strike a chord in today's climate, but at the time, RKO was thrown into panic. Hepburn's popularity with the audiences was beginning to nosedive, and she'd never been the darling of the columnists. It was crucial for RKO to repair the damage, to find a vehicle that would restore Hepburn to public favor.
And forgive me my sins.
RKO cast Hepburn as Mary, Queen of Scots, and for a brief moment it seemed as if the studio's top female stars, Hepburn and Rogers, might come together in the same picture. But it was only for a moment.
The studio legend was that Ginger was very anxious to be in the Mary of Scotland picture and play Queen Elizabeth. And Pan said to her, "We'll be the laughing stock of the world if we have Queen Elizabeth played by Ginger Rogers." Now, even now, many years later, as I repeat that, it seems rather funny to me, Queen Elizabeth played by Ginger Rogers. And so she said, "Well, you don't have to use my name. You use any name you like." And he said, "Well, we can't do that." She arranged with a group of the studio technicians and some pals she had around to make a test. And she went into makeup and she got into the costume and they shot a test of her, but they didn't put her name on it. And they ran it and everybody was overwhelmed. They thought this was just wonderful. We'll send for this actress because she's just great. And then it was revealed that it was Ginger Rogers. And at that point they said, no, she couldn't have the part.
Yes. You are Elizabeth. At last. A Stuart.
Finally, the part went to a relative unknown,
I see now.
Florence Eldridge.
Even now, standing where I am my last night in this world, I wouldn't change places with Elizabeth. I might have known it'd come to gloat like this, stealthily, under cover of night, as you've done everything to destroy me.
And you've done nothing to destroy me.
When was I your enemy?
Always. Always your life was a threat to mine.
How? Why?
You were born too close to my throne.
RKO was doing its best for Hepburn. They spent $860,000 on the picture. They gave her a huge supporting cast and an Oscar-winning director, John Ford. It still didn't work out.
I don't think I was very suited to Mary of Scotland, and I don't think Ford was very suited to the material. I would have liked to have played Elizabeth, would have interested me. I always thought Mary was an absolute jackass.
In a way, it was a good period for women when I came into the industry. It was, first of all, the women's roles were good. They weren't afraid to let women be career women, to be strong. As we say, strong is sometimes today a dirty word. It was not a dirty word then.
Tony Carter lost somewhere in the South Pacific.
We had the Roz Russells and the Betty Davises and the Kate Hepburns and Barbara Stanwyck. Women you would never accuse of being weak and passive. So there was a good sense of women and women's roles, and stories that were about women too. And I have a theory that when the women are interesting, the men are interesting too. I find often that when women are wallpaper around men's lives, the movie becomes a little dull because there is no really exciting interchange. There were women, too, in the fields. There were very good women editors. And I, in my field, writing, there were quite a lot of very good women writers, and it was a good way to enter the industry as a woman. Directors, not many. Dorothy Arzner.
Dorothy Arzner had started as a film editor. She'd cut the Valentino picture Blood and Sand and was the only woman director in Hollywood during the 30s. Her first directing assignment, inevitably perhaps, was called Fashions for Women. In 1933, she directed the romance Christopher Strong with Katharine Hepburn.
out a bid.
How would you like to go up with me?
What?
In my plane.
When?
This morning, if you say so.
I'd like it very much, I think.
Hepburn and her director Arzner managed to create an independent and spirited female character within what is basically a formula movie, an adulterous love affair that ends badly.
It's rather an interesting sex scene, a sort of post-coital. Do you remember that? With
No.
just a voiceover with a hand, and it all looks rather luxurious.
Heavens. Heavens, how terrifying.
It's very sensual, but it's just a hand with some pearls.
Really?
I love my beautiful bracelet. And I've never cared a button for jewels before. Now I'm shackled.
You've got a bracelet and you're just reflecting about life against a clock.
I mean, he gave me the bracelet.
I think so. It's inferred.
That was nice, yes. Thank you.
Courage conquers death.
But not love.
Darling, give up this altitude flight. For me.
All right, darling.
In the RKO Classic Stage Door, Hepburn and Rogers starred together for the first and only time. Lucille Ball appeared in a supporting role. The picture still seems fresh today. It's the story of a group of aspiring young actresses in a third-rate lodging house.
Anybody use a couple of tired Tyrolean peasants?
I'll take a couple on toast.
I'll take mine fried. How was the matinee? Very intimate. We had 100 people on the stage and 50 in the audience.
Well, you had them outnumbered.
Oh, the whole thing makes me sick. What's Gertie sick about? 5 weeks rehearsal and 2 weeks pay.
Matters the show closing?
Like a tired clam.
That's a shame.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, let's all go on relief and get it over with.
Did you hear that? Another show folding? Yes, and if they keep on closing, we can move right into the storehouse with the scenery.
Was there a tremendous fellow feeling among you all, the young people there, or not particularly?
I think not necessarily. I think we all recognized that we were striving to get ahead. But I don't think that we were a club, if that's what you're trying to say. No, we weren't. We didn't just give parties for us or go and be with each other. We recognized the talent that the other one had and worked with them.
How many doors are there to this place? Well, there's the trap door, the humidor, and the cuspidor. How many doors would you like? I only asked a civil question. Did you wish to see Mrs. Orcott?
I want to see whoever I have to see about accommodations.
Which keeper's on duty today, Hetty?
Evidently, you're a very amusing person.
Well, if you'll sit over there, I'll get Mrs. Orcott. She's in the kitchen.
Thank you. Thanks.
You young ladies will pardon me. I shall take the wolfhounds for a stroll through the park.
Pandro Berman had bought the property as a stage play. He put the making of the film in the hands of Gregory LaCava, a director trying to make a comeback after a struggle with alcoholism.
We began to shoot Stage Door with LaCava, my friend, with no script. And LaCava was saying, make it up as you go along. I thought, what the hell, make it up as I go along? If I could do that, I wouldn't be here. And so I went to Pandro and I said, Pandro, what am I doing? Who is this creature? I mean, I know all these girls, and they all have lines that I have. She says, make it up as I go along. I can't do that. And Pandro smiled at me and he said, Kate, you'd be lucky to be in a successful picture. I said, Pandro, I agree with you as far as that goes, but my golly. And I said, well, I suppose there's nothing anyone can do. LaCava's an odd duck. So I went back and I said, Gregory, I said, what is this girl? Who is she? I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, Kate, she's the human question mark. And I said, well, now, Gregory, that's interesting, but what does it mean? And he said, God damned if I know. And that was it.
Hang on to your chairs, girls. We're going to get another load of Shakespeare. Is it against the rules of the house to discuss the classics?
No, go right ahead. I won't take my sleeping pill tonight.
It might interest you girls to know that all great actresses knew their Shakespeare.
How about their onions?
I fail to see what onions have to do with Shakespeare. If you'd listen to Miss Randall, you might learn something.
I like Amos and Andy.
In my day, we were not only actresses, we were technicians. We learnt our trade from the ground up.
That's what we should have. A trade. I want to be a Swiss bell ringer. I want to do something with my hands.
Sit on them.
Catherine put most of us in panic. The very way that she talked was just a little terrifying for me. I just didn't know quite what she was saying. And she didn't talk directly to me at any time, so it really didn't matter. But I was riveted to her whenever she was around. So was everyone else. She looked wonderful. She was very, very beautiful, very slim, very chic, and not at all standoffish with us. She just ignored the whole set.
Using improvisations and overheard remarks, La Cava had devised an approach to dialogue that reflected the particular qualities of his actresses.
He wanted to find out what these people were, what their personalities were. And then he would sit down, and without changing any story or any structure or taking out any scenes, he would rewrite the dialogue for these people to fit their personalities. And I never knew anybody who was as clever at it as he was. A Lucille Ball, a Ginger Rogers, a Katharine Hepburn, any one of those people would be written as they were in life, with the kind of jokes they would crack in life and the kind of seriousness they would have in life and so on. And he was absolutely an amazing man in his ability to do that.
What's the matter? Oh, it's just one of those days. Let's sit down and have a good cry. All right. You can cry on my shoulder. I'm going to go bathe anyhow. No casting today. Leave your name and telephone number, and we'll get in touch with you later. Mr. Powell isn't seeing anyone until the end of the week. Last week, and the week before, and the week before that. Where did I ever get the idea that I was a good actress?
Say, who got all those rave notices a year ago?
Yeah, but that was a year ago.
Oh, boy, you do sound gloomy.
Do you think that also the story it told about these actresses, the lives of these actresses, do you think they were true to life?
Well, that's hard for me to know, really. I don't know the stories about girls who've tried and not succeeded. I only know the girls who tried and have won. So I'm not too keen on knowing those who are crying the blues, because I won't listen to it anyway. I think crying the blues is for the birds. You get out and do your thing. Work at what you're doing. Do it. Make it sing. Either that or get off the tracks.
Not all publicity stills are made in studios. Ginger Rogers is about to be photographed in her own backyard by Look magazine's ace photographer, Earl Thyssen.
Ginger Rogers had never been further from failure. Her partnership with Astaire had brought her prestige, and she was carefully nurturing her own independent career. By the late 30s, she could command more and more prominent starring vehicles. George Stevens' Vivacious Lady teamed her with James Stewart, borrowed from MGM. Katharine Hepburn, meanwhile, had Cary Grant and a leopard.
You know very well you tricked me into this trip. Look, eating your car. Oh, look at the road. Oh, dear, I have a feeling something horrible is going to happen.
Oh, no, David. Everything's going to be all right.
No, I don't care anymore. Oh.
Hello. Oh, what's the matter? Did you get lonely?
Susan, if you know any shortcuts, please take them.
We're going to be there in no time now, David, really.
Because all I want to do is deliver this leopard, take the first train back to town, and forget the last 24 hours ever happened.
I don't believe that leopard was not there in some of those shots. How did that happen?
Well, it was an interesting project because you couldn't plan ahead of time, and we had a wonderful film editor, George Hively, who knew the problems and knew my work and how I had to work. And so I'd get a call, or maybe I was alerted that after lunch at 2 o'clock we'll have a leopard shot. So I have to plan it right there, how to do it. Here are the stand-ins for Hepburn and Cary Grant. And behind them is projected a scene of the leopard, which previously was photographed in front of a projected screen of the street. This is a split screen at the panel, shot separately, the leopard at another time, and then the blend and matching points right down the panel. Here is an example of 3 scenes put together. And in this case, again, the leopard had to be shot separately, but he is placed between the other two scenes. Cary Grant walking through first, then the leopard shot separately, without moving the camera, of course. And then Katharine Hepburn goes through the scene. Now we see the composite with the two traveling split screens. One between Grant and the leopard, and the other between the leopard and Hepburn.
Go on, baby, down the stairs.
It's a traveling matte blended split screen. And the most difficult one, I never thought I'd get it together, was where, believe it or not, he had a shot of Hepburn pulling the leopard on a rope. Well, I knew I had a problem there, so I got the shot of Hepburn pulling the prop man, and then I got the shot of Olga pulling the leopard without moving the camera. And now it was a case of matching the rope. And I had shot several takes with the leopard, so I'd have some choices. And so I studied that, and that rope flipping like this all the time. And I could never get it perfect for a nice, soft split screen, so finally I got the best take I could, and I animated the little piece of rope in the middle, put them together. And it wasn't too good a shot, but it got by. Shortcut.
I don't like Nell anymore.
You can still see in this shot a fragment of the rope held by the leopard's trainer, who's now blotted out by the optical work. The trainer's rope is beneath the one Katharine Hepburn is holding. It gets halfway across the door and then fades away into nothingness. Today, Bringing Up Baby is regarded as the classic screwball comedy. In 1938, it lost RKO $365,000. The studio loaned Hepburn out for a while to Columbia, and on her return, offered her the leading role in a film called Mother Carey's Chickens. In their subtle Hollywood way, they were trying to tell her something. And here's an internal memo that tells us, Miss Katharine Hepburn did not report for work on Mother Carey's Chickens on either April 25th, 26th, or 27th.
Bringing Up Baby was released and it didn't do business. I mean, RKO was faced with the fact that since Bringing Up Baby, I have a piece of Bringing Up Baby, so I still make money from it. But obviously they lost money on Sylvia Scarlett, I'm sure Break of Hearts, I'm sure Woman Rebels, I'm sure. I didn't blame people. I thought they were no good. So, you know, RKO really, if they had been honest, were glad to get rid of me.
Hepburn went home to New York. It was 2 years later that she returned to the movies to star with Cary Grant and James Stewart in MGM's classic, The Philadelphia Story. Perhaps she never would have made a success in the climate now prevailing at her old studio. RKO was now offering a proliferation of stories on the level of popular romantic fiction.
Good luck. I merely wished you good luck.
They featured apparently ordinary homespun girls. Here, Ginger Rogers, dressed in the height of Paris fashion, is actually playing an errand girl.
You mean you just wish me good luck for no reason?
For no reason at all.
There were certain conventions in films, particularly in comedies. There were a lot of conventions. And one of them was that, you know, the hero and heroine had to meet cute. Either their bikes, you know, ran into each other and she fell down and he picked her up, and that was the start of either of hate that turned into love, or, you know, she slipped down, or he slipped down a banana peel that she threw out. And there were always wonderful meet cute situations.
Yes! Where is it?
Well, this looks bad. Probably a fracture. Seems all right. Probably a hip dislocation.
Lay off.
Hello.
Doctor, are you all right?
Yes, I guess so.
David Niven meets Ginger Rogers in Bachelor Mother, RKO's top box office success of 1939. It made $827,000, and it further enhanced Rogers' personal prestige.
Thank you.
Welcome.
The plot of the movie was that that she had somehow a baby had come into her life. She was a virgin. Oh, well, that was the convention of the time. You know, you were quite a lot a virgin. The son of the department store head fell in love with her, and they had a whole love affair. And then when he discovered she had a baby, he did think, of course, that she was a fallen woman and had had an illegitimate baby, which in those days was a horrifical and a daring idea.
After the food is prepared, the mother will, A, get a spoon.
Wonderful. How did he ever think of that?
No, please, don't be so smart. Just do as he says. Get a spoon.
Norman Krasna wrote Bachelor Mother, which was a remake of a German film called Kleine Mutti. There wasn't much left of the original film by the time we finished with it, but that was the origin. And we took it up to Ginger's house one night, and I read it to her. And when it was over, she thanked us very much, and the next day we heard from the studio that she didn't want to do it.
And I said, why not? And he says she just hates it. She thinks it's the worst script she ever read in her life. So I did something I have very seldom done in my life, maybe once or twice. I threw her off the payroll. I said, she's going to make this picture or else she's not going to work. Not going to get paid until she does. Well, about 3 weeks went by, and I guess she couldn't stand it anymore, so Leland came in and told me she would make the picture, but reluctantly, hating every minute of it. So we made the picture, and to make a long story short, we took it out to a preview, and Ginger sneaked in to see the preview. And the preview was an absolute sensation. It was one of the most successful previews I've ever had in my life. Rip-roaring comedy. And the audience just went crazy, and we were so happy. And wouldn't you know that Ginger Rogers came by and sneeringly said to us in the lobby, "It's a dog. I told you it was a dog. It's just as bad as I knew it was going to be."
Did you feel that RKO under Pandro Berman was a place where you got support? Was he a supportive producer?
Well, I think to some extent he was. I think he was a dear man, and I liked him very much. I don't know that he took great notice of me to any great extent. I think he sort of let the audiences tell him that there was something there, which I suppose is what happens mostly. I don't think I was his special child, if that's your question. I think he liked me, but I think I was just another actress.
I'd made 2 pictures with Ginger Rogers, and in my estimation, she's one of the most gifted actresses that I've ever known. Ginger Rogers can do anything that she understands. The only problem with her is making her understand what it is that you want her to do. But once she understands it, she can do anything.
Gentlemen, I am returning under separate cover the book Girl from Memphis by Wilbur Daniel Steele, which you submitted for my consideration. I regret that I do not feel it is the type of thing I care to do. Kindest greetings, Ginger Rogers. Herewith is script It's Love, Love, Love by Herbert Clyde Lewis. Unfortunately, it is not the type of thing I care to do. Consequently, I am refusing it and returning it as of this date. Personally, I think this script would make a very good trailer. In my opinion, the writer made a mistake by not throwing away the original idea and starting afresh.
Of course, I wanted parts that really gave me a chance to show that I could do it, whatever it was. I had offers to do things that I turned down, and I shouldn't have, but I've turned down some awfully good parts, and I shouldn't have done that, because I was looking for something I never found. I still never have found it.
What is that, do you think, you were looking for?
That part, quote unquote, that part.
1939, Charles Laughton in what is still the most enduring screen version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The producer was Pandro Berman. The picture cost RKO nearly $2 million. It was a good investment. It grossed over $3 million at the box office.
We'll go to the king and force him to suspend Sanctuary.
In spite of this triumph, it's here that we have to say farewell to one of the leading players in our story, Pandro Berman, the man who had taken RKO out of the doldrums of the early 30s. Now he was faced with a new studio president, George Schaefer, who started to reorganize the whole structure of the company.
He claimed that he wanted me to stay there and run the studio just as I had been doing. And then he went out and he hired all kinds of people without asking my advice or opinion and let them work directly under him out of New York so that I had no contact with them at all. Well, I couldn't stand being in a studio that I was supposed to be running and making pictures and having other people run all over the studio making pictures that I didn't know anything about. So I simply wrote him a real sharp letter of resignation and walked out.
Give me a knife.
Thank you. How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Orson Welles. I'm speaking for the Mercury Theater, and what follows is supposed to advertise our first motion picture. Citizen Kane is the title, and we hope it can correctly be called a coming attraction.
One of the new units hired by George Schaefer was headed by a 24-year-old with no filmmaking experience, though he did have the dubious distinction of having created Countrywide Panic with a radio broadcast.
I saw him just before I left. He was a brilliant man. He had a lot to offer. He made 2 wonderful pictures. I was sorry that I didn't have him. But he also went bad after the second picture.
They did hope to live to see the day, they said, when that boy would get his comeuppance.
His what?
His comeuppance.
Next week in our Tales from Hollywood, we look at the RKO years of Orson Welles, the magnificent Ambersons, the phenomenon of Citizen Kane, and the disaster of the South American project, the unfinished It's All True. We talk to Welles's colleagues and collaborators, some speaking about him for the first time on film, and we show rare footage of Welles at work, fragments of film we found in private archives in America and Brazil.